Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Rotary meeting today. We want to thank everyone for being here, and especially our Thursday club guests. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate that. And now, if you will, please stand. We will have Charlie Amon introduce the campaign.
Let's pray. As we gather here today as members of Rotary, we pray that we are ever mindful of opportunities to render our service to fellow citizens and to our community. Let us give gratitude for our opportunity to serve Rotary as it serves others. We offer thanks for our food, blessings for one another, and for absent friends. Let us be a source of hope for those in need, keeping in mind always the enduring values of life, exerting our efforts in those areas and continue to strive to make a better world. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Charlie. And if you will, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now we have announced, I think earlier, that we, as a club, have been applying for some grants to do some of the things we're doing. And I'd like to ask Bill Laird to come up and bring us an update on where we are with the grant requests.
President Lumen. In particular, thanks to those friends of ours in the Thursday Club, we have received your contribution. We are going to send ours and it to Italy tomorrow to the Modena Club. Once they receive our monies and they receive the Modena Club monies towards the AIW program, you probably remember from March 9th, then Rotary in Evanston, Illinois will send the District 2070 contribution, the District 7670 contribution, and the match from Rotary International, so because it's a global grant. And because we got it in before June 30th, we get 100% match, because starting July the 1st, that decreases around the world to 80%. So the Modena Club, bless their hearts, in about 8.5 weeks, did 9 months worth of effort. On the local front, we have applied, as you all have as well in the Thursday Club, for the August children's event out at the Crawdad Stadium for disabled children. That is a district grant. And on the other hand, our club has filed a district grant for Rise Against Hunger again, finally. And put it on your calendar because it's never too soon, March 26, 2022. You'll hear a whole lot more. You'll be tired of hearing about it by the time February and March of next year roll around. But I need for you to bring your families. I need for you to bring your grandkids, better half, whatever, and bag food for those less fortunate. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. Those of you who were with us last meeting on Tuesday were introduced to 3 of our scholarship recipients, the recipients of the money we raised at our soccer tournament. And one of the recipients was not able to attend, but she is with us here today. And I'd like to ask Bill Brumman to introduce her.
Thank you, President Lou. Hello, everybody. Well, like you said last week, we recognize three of our four scholarship recipients. Yeah, but today, who couldn't attend a Zoom meeting last year, so. Nealon, you're up.
My name is Hickory, and I'll be attending Savannah College of Art Design starting in the fall as an incoming freshman. I've decided to major in fibers, which is a course of study that entails weaving and textiles and all sorts of things like that. So that I can hopefully return to Catawba County after my 4 years of studies and be able to find work here since there's such a large textiles industry here. Art has been a very important piece of my life, and it's a blessing that I'm able to pursue a career in it. I was always told as a child that art, I would never be able to get a job. Arts industry, it's such a difficult service. But through having great art teachers, which is why it's such a blessing to be able to receive scholarships like this, because art school and school in general is very expensive. So I'd really like to thank Rotary for this opportunity and being able to receive the scholarship because it has helped me and my family tremendously. So thank you so much.
Just a reminder, the Tuesday Club will not be meeting next Tuesday. We're joining the Thursday Club on Thursday with a joint meeting next week. Before we get to our program, our guests from the Thursday Club, does anyone in the Thursday Club have any announcements they need to share with us today? Well, seeing none, our program today will be presented by Dave Leonetti. Dave. Hey.
Thanks, everyone. I'm here to introduce Meg Nealon Lale. We'll have our program this evening. She's here from the Carolina Thread Trail. Meg's a community planner and landscape architect. She is the founder of Nealon Planning. Before starting her own company, she was employed by a nationally recognized land planning and urban design firm based in Charlotte. Throughout her career of almost 30 years, she has assisted public and private sector clients with master plans for future land use, development, and conservation. She has also been involved in corridor studies, open space and public realm master planning, and trail system plans. Among her many projects was the Inspiring Spaces Master Plan, which was the basis for the City of Hickory's bond program and all of the work that we have going on right now with the City Walk, the River Walk, and tomorrow we're actually going to be letting the bids out on the build project, which is going to cross US 321 to the Crawdad Stadium and Airport. She served as a member of the North Carolina Board of Landscape Architects as a former chair, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission, Historic Districts Commission in Charlotte, and she's currently on the City of Hickory Appearance Commission. Meg graduated from the University of Georgia with a Bachelor of Landscape Architecture and from UNC Chapel Hill with a Master of City and Regional Planning. She's been a resident of North Carolina for over 3 decades and now resides in Hickory with her husband, Brad Lay. Her interests include travel, hiking, photography, and any reasons to be outside, which is kind of one of the reasons that she's here today. Today, she's going to be representing the Carolina Thread Trail. She's currently serving on a steering committee that has been established to advance the implementation of the Thread Trail Master Plan in 7 of the 15 counties of the original Master Plan study. On that committee, she represents Catawba County. And with that, Meg, we'd love to hear more about the Carolina Thread Trail.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for giving me some time on your agenda today. I'll try to be brief, but I am obviously very excited about this opportunity for Catawba County. And before I get started, I'm just curious, how many of you, by show of hands, have heard of the Carolina Thread Trail prior to today? Oh, good. That's great. I was worried about it not being a household thing. And so, again, show of hands, how many of you think you've walked on a segment of the Carolina Thread Trail somewhere in our region? Okay, that's a pretty good number. All right, so my interest in sharing with you today is to raise awareness of what this thing is and hopefully what it can do for Catawba County. And so it is a regional plan for the 15 counties, a system of trails for 15 counties, of which we are a part. And as we think about what the potential is for Catawba County, that's the real thing I want to share with you today. If I can put this to advance, and if I not. But right on the mic. He's not, stayed out of it. Okay, Dave's got it figured out. Okay, I'm gonna pick this up so that you guys can hear me a bit better. Okay, is this better?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so if you visit the Carolina Thread Trail website, I'm gonna stand back so I can move around with this. Folks can see past my hair.
Just make sure you stay in the frame of the.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I apologize. So I'll pass my hair. So it is a regional system, and if you check out the website, you find.
Go over about 2 feet. You're still in, yeah.
Anywhere you want to get it.
Okay. You can find a lot of information. I encourage you to visit the website because there's a lot of information about what's been built so far. The master plan was created almost 20 years ago. And Amelia, you might be interested to know that the name stems from our celebration of the history and heritage in the textile industry. So that's where the thread comes from. But it has always been thought of as a system that's not really just about trails, it's about connecting communities. And so those destinations along the way are extremely important, and we're excited to be part of a regional system that makes Hickory and its other municipalities and the whole county part of this larger region. Next slide. So also, if you visit the website, you'll find out the many benefits of the Carolina Thread Trail. And they are many of the things that you would think of, like the physical exercise and how that benefits our health, but also things like protecting the environment or connecting communities and really establishing a better quality of life for all of us. And then last but not least, the economy. I think the economic development aspects of having a trail system in your community, you'll hear me talk a little bit about more about that in a second. So the next slide, you're probably saying why Catawba and why right now if the master plan has been in the works for their implementation of the master plan has really been in the works for 20 years or so. Well, the leaders of Carolina Thread Trail right now have decided that 15 counties is a lot. And so they want to narrow the focus and channel some energy into a subset of counties. Unfortunately, Catawba is one of those. And the idea is if we can really make an impact in 7 counties instead of all 15, by the way, there are segments in all 15 right now. But if we can really make an impact, this can really gain a lot more momentum and we'll see a lot more across all 15 counties. And so in looking at potential for Catawba at this very local level, the next slide details some of the benefits specific to Catawba County. As you can see from this list, it can very much build on the initiative that the city has underway right now, the City Walk and River Walk and other public spaces. But at bottom line, we want to attract families. Young talent is one of those things that really drives people's decisions to locate in an area. But we can also reduce tourism, build on what the city's doing and other initiatives across the county and the state. Help with community health. We know from our community health assessment for Catawba County, there are some areas we can improve on. Obesity is one of those things. So giving people a way to get outside and exercise is extremely important. And also creating value. Across the United States, we're seeing evidence of property values going up with proximity and access to trail systems like this. Next slide. So this is a recent study that shows what's influencing what are the factors influencing people's choices in their residential locations. So when they're deciding to move to a new place or stay in a new place, one of those top 3 things is trails and open space. And so that's actually pretty important when we think about what employers are doing, where they're choosing their locations. That's a recruiting tool for them. When they think about how do we get folks to decide to come work for our company, well, quality of life is always in that top 5, and trails and open space often define quality of life for people. So if you see on the next slide in this same study, 68% of business owners are looking for this because they see how important it is, not just to attract employees, but also to retain them over the long term. So that I think is a big deal and a real opportunity for Catawba County as we look to grow and develop and attract more employers to this region and get some younger folks staying and living in this area. Next slide. So that's kind of the local level, the sense of what's happening in and around Catawba County. But when you go out about 30,000 feet and look at what's happening at the state level and even beyond, there are trail systems in the works. The state actually has a big initiative right now, the Great Trails Program or Great Trails Initiative. And a map of the trail systems in North Carolina identifies several that lie west of here. So if you just look at Western North Carolina, you see a lot of trails. But if you look from Hickory to Charlotte, that spot in the middle, there are some gaps there, and Thread Trail is filling some of those gaps. But what I think is really exciting for Catawba County is how we can be a bridge or a link into the rest of the trail system that really is happening at a state level. So if you go to the next slide, this is just a series of graphics showing like the Mountains to Sea Trail, the Over Mountain Victory Trail, other state trails that are in the vicinity that all overlap and come into, it's like that point of access is or will be into Catawba County. The Wilderness Gateway Trail is the newest one that is emerging, and it is going to come through South Mountain State Park and overlap with the Fonta Flora Trail and hopefully come right into Catawba County. And so when you look at all those counties served and go to the next slide and see how we can tie in to being part of the 11 counties of the 15 that are in this whole system, 11 are North Carolina, combine all of those. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see that it's actually 30 counties served just by linking through Catawba County. That's a third of North Carolina, right? And so that's a pretty massive system that puts Catawba County in a key spot to be the hub within this massive regional system. So hopefully that'll start to give a little perspective on where we sit relative to all these things and those opportunities that are associated with it. So the next slide, I want to give you a little taste of an example, and you have to apologize for the graphics because the next one is my mock-up of what would it be like to kind of experience a part of these trails, say in a weekend or part of a week. And so the idea here, what you're seeing depicted here in the north end is Lake Hickory, and some of those experiences, even like the Crawdad Stadium and coming down into downtown Hickory, moving your way out from Mountain View, going to Baker's Mountain, going to Hart Square. That's a trail system that could weave down, find its way into Lincoln County, Gaston County, and point south even into South Carolina. And I'm looking at Catherine Wheaton because I know she's one of probably several in this room who's done the Camino Trail. And so just think about what's that experience. It's not just about the trail, but how do we get people to come here for multiple days and really experience our region and the beauty of our natural environment and some of the cultural things along the way. So the next slide is always, there's always that question of, well, how do we get this done? And how do we keep it once we've got it? So the creating and maintaining trails is a really important aspect of this entire Carolina Thread Trails initiative. We have to get the trails on the ground, and then we also have to maintain them. We're in that infancy where we have the responsibility or the drive to get those trails on the ground. So we're in the creating mode right now. So there are many ways to participate, but fundraising is a big piece of this right now to be able to get those trails on the ground. So let's talk about creating the trails on the next slide. We have, if you look at the current master plan just for Catawba County, it's Carolina Thread Trail, it's about 130 miles of trail. 28 of those miles we think are included in that. And that does overlap with existing trails. So local trails do become part of this system. So the next slide, what we know is that to get a trail on the ground, we're looking at between $30,000 and $70,000 to get natural surface, a mile of natural surface trail on the ground. So that's some of our focus here is making sure we're moving in that direction. Carolina Thread Trail is an entity that working in partnership with the state, the counties, and the municipalities and other agencies, looking for ways to partner with them to make sure some of these things happen and these get funded. So they are simultaneously raising money through private donations and also through grants and other mechanisms. So if you go to the next slide, that funding can come in the form of donations, that's number one. but it also comes in the form of the grants that I mentioned, the partnerships that the Carolina Thread Trail can have with others. Contributions are also a key piece of this. So in some instances, there are landowners who are dedicating easements across their property, so some of the land is available for these segments to be continuous. And then finally, materials, contributions to materials also, so it might be bridges for creek crossings and things of that nature. So that's how the trails get created. A 5-year capital campaign has been launched called Blazing New Trails. And again, it's focused on these 7 counties, and Catawba is a part of that. So we're looking at raising $12 million across the 7 counties, $1 million for Catawba County to get some of these on the ground, and that is actually underway. So we started the 5-year process already. I wanted to share that with you, not just to raise awareness of this initiative, but point out that this is a key piece, a key step in our process to get them on the ground here. Another thing that I think is important for all of you to know is the money that's raised for Catawba County through this capital campaign, 70% of it goes to trail building. The other 30% is for overhead, but they are hiring staff people to be able to be on the ground in Catawba County, each of these 7 counties, but we will have somebody devoted to Catawba County to really make sure things are happening here, make those connections, make sure those partnerships are forming and things like that. So that's the gist of it. I've covered a lot of ground here, and perhaps you have some questions for me. But on the last slide, I've got some contact information. I would love to entertain any questions that you all have about this, and hope you share my enthusiasm for Catawba County's opportunity.
Can you point out where some of the existing trail already is in the county?
Absolutely. Back up to the one that's the mile slide. There you go. Thanks, Hubert. So what you're seeing on this map is very abstract, but I'm going to use my pointer. Right here is Hickory. And so you're seeing the idea that Carolina Thread Trail can and will overlap with our existing trail system. You're also seeing the trails in and around Newton and out towards Claremont and Catawba. Those areas. So the darker brown are existing trails. The lighter color are where trails are planned. The alignments might not match that exactly, but they'll be close to those. So you're seeing some things like the western route that I was referring to. Henry Fork and Jacob Fork are areas that are being targeted for a future state park. So the paddling trails can be part of this also. So that gives you a sense of that.
So Meg, is the greenway, the existing greenway, part of that trail that we're looking at? And does that go down to any of the development that's being done on the lake and along the lake?
Yes.
Repeat the question, please.
Yeah, so the what's being shown on the map, does it go towards and include the development and trails that are happening along the lake? I get that right. So yeah, so Riverwalk will be part of the Carolina Thread Trail as far as I know. Looking for Mayor for God. City Walk, Book Walk, some of those, all of them. So the entire Hickory system. So eventually you will see signage that indicates City Walk and Carolina Thread Trail. So there's some co-branding that would happen there, but it's important to have those overlaps so that we can bring local networks into the regional system and not have redundancy.
So did you say the Carolina Thread Trail would intersect at some point with Mountains to City? And where would that be?
Oh, so this is my favorite part of it. So right about here is where the Wilderness Gateway Trail will come into Catawba County. And that's the one that would take you over to Lake Lure and Chimney Rock and go through South Mount State Park. And then this or this, maybe both, but they overlap. And then this one actually where the Fontaine Flora Trail will likely come in. It's somewhere along our border here. Those two going west intersect with the Mountains to Sea Trail. And so it's French Broad River and all those, they start to overlap as we get west of here. So someday you'll be able to make that kind of connection, right?
I think on the one that had to do with the donations and things, it says for every $1 raised.
Yes.
Yeah.
That.
So how did, back when, forward. It generates $10 in public funding. Is there how does that connection work?
So that's a really great question that I don't fully know the answer to. It's the Carolina Fred Trail answer to that. But however they are leveraging the private money. Thanks, Michael. However they're leveraging the private fundraising to be able to capture that. So anybody who's Shipper, can you answer that?
There you go. And that the way that works is typically the Carolina Thread Trail gives money that initiates projects in the community. And then the community probably gives 9/10 of the money, and a lot of times it's from county and city funds. But the Thread Trail, that 10% initiates a project all the time.
Right.
And I imagine that's where that 90% comes from.
Right, and for example, I know some projects in Gaston County right now that Carolina Thread Trail is able to partner with the municipalities there and leverage that money that they have raised to access NCDOT grants. So when there is that matching requirement, so they're moving forward. I think one town has 3 or 4 NCDOT grants that Carolina Thread Trail has been effective in putting up the initial money to be able to successfully get those grants. Alan?
David may be able to give us a good example of that, of $20 million that we voted on as citizens for the bond referendum. 40 million, I'm sorry. How many million more have we gotten in grants?
Roughly 50 million in additional grant dollars.
On top of what we have.
That's it. I mean, that's a great example. So anytime you actually take that money and leverage it for more, it's going to get you further than just using what you got.
And it's very important also to emphasize the fact you already alluded to it. It's not just quality of life. There are several examples that are here today of businesses and economic development that have told us specifically that this contributed greatly to their decision to come to Catawba County and the Hickory and this metropolitan area. It's a tremendous tool in our toolbox that we didn't realize several years ago. But it really has helped us tremendously as far as economic development as well.
That's right. That's right. So the mayor's making is the fact that we're seeing this across the country, actually. Whether we enjoy the trails or not, it will help the community grow in ways that we are actually seeking, the employment and then getting some young families and young talent into the area. So there are companies in Hickory that, finding out about City Walk and Riverwalk, have chosen to stay in Hickory. Others have chosen to relocate to this location. We also see that, being so close to Charlotte, it's a great place for entrepreneurs. So it's a great place for people to start businesses. And when they think about what they can offer their employees as they grow and develop over time, it's really strong. So there's just one story after another, not just here, but across North Carolina and across the US of employers choosing this location for exactly that reason. Locations like it. Yes, sir.
What about the maintaining part? Maintenance, does that fall through the?
It can. It depends on whose jurisdiction that segment falls under. So in the case of the trails that are in the city of Hickory, those will continue to be city of Hickory trails and maintained by the city of Hickory. There's some that will be county trails that will be maintained by the county. There will be some that Fred Trail will continue to maintain. So you saw on the website clip there that volunteering, days on the trail, those kinds of things are important as well. So they'll get volunteers out to do trail maintenance, things like that. So it'll overlap in some places with state trails, so the state may have that responsibility. So it just varies depending on which segment it is.
So Megan, 2-part question. One, would it be possible for the Carolina Thread Trail to help us lead a hike on a piece of the trail that's maybe out there? And then my second question is, by show of hands, how many people in this group would be interested in going?
Okay, wow, the hands are already up. I think that's a great question. I think the short answer is I want to say yes, and it's probably a strong maybe. I say that putting on my other hat, I'm also on the Foothills Conservancy Board, and recently a lot of land has been put into a conservation easement or 2 or 3 that they are maintaining right now. And so being able to get out on the land sometimes requires being with somebody who's actually responsible for that. So even if it's not a trail today, we may be willing to slash through some vegetation with one of the guys from the Conservancy leading us, but there may be also some opportunities for Thread Trail folks staff to join us with that as well. So I think it's worth looking into, but there's nothing like getting a taste of it than being out on the land, right? Super, do you have?
Follow their website, Carolina Thread Trail has events all the time. They had National Trails Days on June 5th in Mount Holly, and so that type of thing can happen, and it is part of the program. So, and that you may be interested in doing some things in areas that aren't in Catawba County too, to see what other communities do.
That's right. So if there is that interest, we'd love to know and see if we can't organize something like that, because I think that when you can have a real taste of it, gives you a real sense of what the possibilities are.
We have time for one more question.
That's it. All right, well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Nick, for that wonderful program. That's great news for all of us. That pretty well concludes our meeting today, except for one brief reminder, and that is for the Tuesday Club Board. We will be having a board directors meeting next Tuesday at noon via Zoom, and you'll be receiving a link for that shortly. And for now, if you will, please stand and join me with the four-way test. Thank you. Is it true? Is fair law concerned? Will build goodwill and relationships will be beneficial to all concerned. Thank all of you for coming and have a good week.
Thanks, everybody.